welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Before we start the show, I have a very big announcement. The Elements of Ayurveda podcast turns 1 year old on August 10th. And to celebrate, I'm holding a big competition with a chance to win one of 4 prizes. The first prize is entry into my Digestive Reset Cleanse. The next seasonal online group cleanse starts September 27th. The second prize will be an in-depth 90-minute online consultation with me. The third prize will be entry into my Daily Habits for Holistic Health courses, a 4-week online course helping you implement all those dinacharya, those daily habits in line with the circadian rhythms. And the final prize is from our friends at Banyan Botanicals. It will be a bundle of products which are specific for your dosha. So to enter the competition, head on over to my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. Also, just click on the link in the show notes and you can enter as many times as you want in the month previous. So from July 10th to August 9th, and then I will be announcing the winners on the anniversary episode. Now, for the anniversary episode of the podcast, I want to hear from you. I would love to hear your feedback on what your thoughts about the show, feedback if you've gone through any of my courses, the cleanses, the Daily Habits course, or if you've done an online consultation with me, or if you're just a listener to the podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback, and maybe use your voice on that anniversary episode. To record your voice, you can go to my website, and on the footer of each page of my website, you'll see a little box that says send a voice message to Colette, and you can record your voice there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I love to hear your messages, and it really helps me keep going as I hear how this show affects the people out there listening. So for that special anniversary episode, I'm going to be using snippets of this feedback from these voice recordings. So please head on over there, just scroll down to the footer of each page of my website. You'll find that little box. It's very simple. You just hit start recording, and then there's a stop button and a send button, and that's it. So I'd love to hear your voice. If you want to be featured on that special anniversary episode, please go ahead and send your message and leave your thoughts. Okay, now let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. I'm with Amy again today. Hi, Amy.
Good morning.
Always great to have you. We're very excited for our talk today because it's all on compassion. It's a huge topic, massive. And it's so massive, I'm going to start with 2 quotes from 2 very enlightened souls. The first one being the Dalai Lama. And he says that love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. I mean, you don't get bigger than that, right? And then Einstein,
Absolutely.
Right? Einstein said humanity needs compassion as much as it needs all the technologies that have connected us and set forth before us the terrifying, wondrous possibility of becoming one human race. So just those 2 quotes alone just tell us how huge this topic is. And we know that compassion is so important. And let me start by giving a little bit of explanation about what compassion is. Well, compassion is the ability to feel for another living being. Now, I was getting a little bit confused about compassion and empathy. And then I looked it up. And then empathy is the ability to not only understand another's feelings, but also to become one with that person's distress, to put yourself in their shoes, as it were. Now, I think we're born with the quality of compassion, but however, not everyone has the quality of empathy. And Amy, I'd love to hear what you think about this, and also just to get your definition of compassion.
For me, compassion it involves many, many things. It involves a sense of humility that I don't know very much at all, and that people act in different ways and say things based on their history and their upbringing and their desires and needs and goals, and that I don't really know much at all. So for me, there's always a feeling of humility around compassion. There's a feeling of spaciousness because I don't know it all. I need to allow space in my relationships, and even people I don't know that I'm hoping to express compassion towards, that probably we have the same needs, but we just have very different strategies of getting those needs met, and that I need to allow enough spaciousness for people to have different strategies to meet their needs than I might choose. Mm-hmm. And the third thing that, kind of defines compassion for me is this idea that it's kind of mysterious. There's a prana, or a life force, that flows between all of us. Some of us have a stronger connection to each other than others, but it's almost very mysterious why I can have compassion for one person or one animal or one situation, but not another. So I just think having humility and spaciousness and mystery allows me to have compassion, because it encourages me to let go of my rigid idea of what's right and what's wrong, and just to open it up. And when I can do that, that's when I experience compassion.
Right. That's beautiful. And do you think that we're born with compassion, the quality of compassion?
I do. I think children have less rigidity. They have less ideas about how things should be and shouldn't be. And I think they're much more spacious and receptive and willing to allow life to be as it is, because they're not having all of these hardcore ideas about what they want and need in this life yet. And so I think we're born with that openness. And the idea is that, can we maintain that openness as we become adults and get very strong preferences and ideals?
Right. And it's very interesting, because when you think that children are in the kapha stage of life, and kapha has the wonderful qualities of a carer, of being very grounded, of being very, it has the compassionate qualities, also that quality of understanding, and just that quality of wanting everybody to get along and to be joyful. So children naturally embody that quality. And then as we go into the pitta stage of life, through puberty and adulthood, with the pitta, fire comes out. And this is where there's more of that individualism, and there's more of that striving and that maybe materialism, and wanting to get into that, the striding for career and family and wealth and possessions. So it's interesting that, yes, we can really see in the children, in the kapha stage of life, that we have that natural compassion. And now it's, how do we keep that as we go through life? Because I also think that compassion is also kindness, and it's also curiosity.
Yes, there has to be, as I was saying, openness. You're calling it curiosity. You see children just in awe of a ladybug, and they're just they're open to what is in the present moment instead of what should be or I want it to be. And I think that naturally leads itself towards more compassion, because when you're just very present in the moment with the person who's sitting in front of you and the feelings that are arising inside of you, it just is much more natural to have compassion versus stuck in our rigid ideas, stuck in how we want things to be. That kind of closes down the gates of compassion, I think.
Absolutely. And it's being in the present moment and being present when you're with somebody and seeing them for who they are. Actually, I did hear somewhere along the way, and I don't know who said it, but compassion is honoring somebody's humanity.
Yes.
And I think that is beautiful. And actually, that just brings to mind a story of a friend of mine who was unfortunately homeless for a period of time. And I recall when I arrived in California, I was shocked and horrified by the amount of homeless people there. And of course, a lot of homeless people from around the States travel to California because it's, if you're going to live on the streets, it's got the best weather, the best climate. And I was talking with my friend who was previously homeless, and I asked him, I don't know how to react when I see a homeless person. I don't know what to do. I was asking him advice. At this stage he wasn't homeless anymore, and I was asking him advice. What should I do? And he just said, acknowledge them. It's like the worst thing for him when he was on the streets was people just walking by like he didn't exist. And he said, you don't even have to give anything. You don't have to say anything. Just look them in the eye and acknowledge them. Oh, it just touches my heart talking about it now. But it's just that connection, like I acknowledge you. And that is what we're doing when we're being compassionate with somebody. We're just honoring their humanity. I see you.
I'd like to take it one step further with the story that touched me. I was in a diner a few years ago, and a homeless woman came in and asked for a meal, and the waitress said, I'm sorry, that's not something we can accommodate here. And a gentleman who was sitting at the counter said to the homeless woman, please come sit by me. And so she sat next to him, and I thought, oh, he's going to order her a meal and buy it. And what a nice gesture that is, right? Yeah. But I burst into tears when he said the following, waitress, can you get me another fork?
Ooh. Okay.
Yes, I was in the diner. I burst into tears because it wasn't that I'm going to feel sorry for you and buy you a meal and then you're going to go on your merry way. It was, I'm going to let you eat off my plate and I'm going to share a meal with you. I mean, the intimacy of that, the humanity of that changed my life.
Wow, that is a beautiful story. That is exactly that. It's not, and there is a fine line between feeling sorry for somebody and being compassionate, and that story exemplifies that. That it's not like, I'm going to spend some money or get you a meal because I feel bad, but it's like, no, come share with me. I want you. I'm acknowledging you. Come sit with me. I want to spend time with you.
And there was no judgment. It was two human beings connecting and sharing a meal. And I think that's really important. I think so many of us practice false compassion because we're judging someone. Yeah. We think they're lesser than us. Yeah. We're going to use some of our resources to help this person who can't help themselves. And it's really not a very compassionate way to be in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's true because, like I said, there's a fine line between compassion and feeling sorry for somebody. And it's not about doing something for a person, but in fact, showing them the way to.
Or even, just honoring them for being who they are in this very moment. Maybe I can't give them any tools or any helpfulness or, maybe I can't, but if I can, like you said, look them in the eye and see them as another human being who's equal to us, not someone that we're trying to save. I think so many of us confuse compassion with codependency, and we're actually being compassionate to build up our self-identity that we're an amazing person, and the strange thing is we're doing it to make ourselves feel better instead of doing it to connect with another human being that deserves love and peace and all the things that we all want.
Absolutely. And yes, absolutely. And we all want connection. That's what we all strive for. And that's why there's so many problems, I think, in our world today, because we have less connection than ever before. And that's exactly what it is. It's just connecting with that other person, that other living being, whether it be a person or an animal or Mother Nature, that you're just connecting and being present and spending time. And I think Ayurveda really helped me gain more compassion, because it was when I really understood the mind-body types, the other doshas of Vata, Pitta, Kapha, that I really understood their tendencies. So rather than get upset at somebody because they acted a certain way, I had more compassion because I knew in advance what that dosha's tendencies were. And it's not judgment, but I just had the awareness, oh, they're not doing that to me, that this is their way of being.
Exactly. And it makes it so much easier, because when someone, say, is just downright abusive to you, you can step back and say, this person is currently out of balance, and it may or may not have anything to do with me. And it's okay. I can send them love and peace and compassion, hoping for them to reintegrate themselves and come into balance and not feel so defensive and reactive towards them.
Yeah. And it's really helped me in so many situations, just looking at it from a more compassionate point of view rather than being judgmental.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. I as a woman with a lot of fire and pitta, I have to be very careful that I'm not saying, oh, they're out of balance, and, oh, wow, look at them and look at me. I'm so perfect and I'm so in balance. And when they get back in balance, they'll understand my way. I could go there. Yeah. I have to actively work to not go there and to just say, okay, it appears they're not in balance. And how many times have I been out of balance in the last month? And how many times have I snapped at people? And how many times have I been impatient and short? And that goes back to your view about humanity, that we're all human. We all need compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for others. Yeah. And so whenever I get feeling a little judgy, I have to come back and say, Amy, you regularly get out of balance.
Right. So, I'm right there with you. Yeah. And you have to watch out for that judgment, because I know I've definitely said, oh, I feel sorry for that person, and caught myself, or I've judged them on, oh, they've got, a lot of fire going on, or they're, totally out of balance. But yes, you have to catch yourself and just understand we are all human, and it's a tendency to have all these different emotions. And just to have awareness around it as well, of how you're reacting to things and people.
So I have a hard question for you. What do you do when you find yourself in a situation that you have been consciously practicing what we just talked about? Yeah. Not judging, giving people space to have their experience, just working on keeping yourself in balance as much as possible. But you're in a situation where the other person is chronically out of balance, doesn't realize it, doesn't give the same kindness back to you in terms of seeing when you're out of balance and giving you space. And so you're in a situation where you're with someone who's very unaware of what true compassion is without judgment. And it's painful over and over and over. You're in this situation for months and years that they're not returning the favor, and therefore it's very difficult to be in a close relationship with them over the long period of time. What do you do?
Well, I think you have to continue giving compassion without expecting anything back. And one thing that I always say when I'm dealing with something that's challenging is that they're on their journey, and I give them compassion, I give them love. But I don't want to get caught up in whatever drama is there, but also that they're on their journey, and they have to go through their lessons. And a lot of times if, they're not ready to hear it, you could be talking to them about having compassion and self-compassion and taking care of themselves and bringing themselves into balance. But if they're not in that space, they're not ready to hear it. So you almost just have to give them space, as much space as you need to, without, so that you don't get caught up in that drama. And when they're ready, hopefully that they'll come to you, and just continue to give them love and compassion from a distance if you need to, but just to the understanding that they're on their journey and however long it takes. And I've been caught up in several relationships like that it's just, you have to, as much as I want to help the person, I have to understand that unless they're ready and open, that I just have to back off and wait until they approach me to help.
Or not. It could be a lifelong lesson that they're working with. And so what I've been trying to do in situations like this is protect myself and have compassion for myself, to not put myself in harm's way and continuously be aggravated and overwhelmed. But like you said, create space, like the Yoga Sutra says, upeksha, discriminate, create space. But I still try to keep them in my daily prayers and my daily meditation, not to say, I hope they sometime turn around and come back to me and admit that I was right, but to truly, truly feel a tenderness for them in my heart and know that I'm screwing up just as much as they're screwing up, and we're all in this together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what I do. I've had to let some people go where their energy, I just couldn't be around. And I knew it wasn't for my higher purpose, and I was feeling drained, or it was toxic, or for whatever reason. But every morning when I do my meditation, I'll send them love. And I hope that, I'll ask for that they get the guidance they need to bring themselves back into balance. But we can't, be there to take the crap at the other end, because you have to protect yourself from that. You really do. And it's hard because for those of us who are empathic or who want to help, I've been definitely one of those people who's like, taking on those people. It's like, I can help them. I've definitely done that over and over again. And now I'm learning my lesson. Like, it's not my job. It's not my job to fix them unless, somebody's ready to, and seeks my advice. Well, then I'm more than happy to share. But if they don't come seeking my advice, I just put my hands up and say they're on their journey. And that gives me some solace that, I hope they find their way.
Yeah. And what's been interesting to me over the years as I've been more successful at practicing this, because as I said, there's a strong tendency to be codependent and fix everybody. But when I've been able to create that space and understand that we're all in this sinking boat together, it turns out that years later, people often do come back, and not to tell me I was right, but to connect. They miss me. They want me to be part of their life again. All the hurt feelings have kind of been soothed. We all see more clearly, and we can kind of do a reset.
Absolutely. And I'd love to delve into that further. Yeah, and I know you definitely want to discuss this today, is self-compassion, because you have to start with self-compassion and build up, your own body and mind so that you're in balance and you can practice compassion before you can give to others. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit and about self-compassion. And actually, I was listening recently to Pima Chodron on Super Soul Sunday, and she talked about compassionate abiding, which is basically self-compassion. She talks about compassionate abiding, where it means like breathing into this pain of whatever's going on, accepting it. Because, it's part of one of our emotions is pain, but for some reason we want to suppress it and we want to numb it and get away from it. But she says, feel into it, surrender to it, just don't fight it, don't run from it. I love that idea of just being with whatever pain arises. What do you think of that, this compassionate abiding?
I love it. most of what we experience in the present moment as pain actually has tentacles that are connected to things that are much, much deeper from our past and our childhood and rejection and abandonment and unworthy and all these messages that we have deep inside ourselves that maybe we're unaware of that are driving our current behavior. And so I think when we can sit with it and feel it and be it, it not only heals the present moment, but it actually mysteriously helps us to heal the past wound. Yeah. And as we work through it in the current situation and realize, wait a minute, I am worthy, or wait a minute, I am smart, or wait a minute, I am. As we move through it in the present moment, it actually goes back and heals deep, deep psychological distress within us. And what that does is now we behave differently in the world. We're not being driven by this unconscious thing that's been sitting in there driving us around, right? Yeah. So I just think it's so critical that we learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And what, like you're saying, do you think it's cyclical? Like these, I know for myself, I've experienced these same things coming up over and over again until I've learned a lesson from them.
I do. And I personally think it's so deep. I don't know if it's genetic or ancestral or whatever. Yeah, there's some things that I don't know why I'm so triggered. I don't know why it's so painful. The person next to me might not be triggered at all by the same event. And I don't have to have language or logic or rational reason why I'm so upset. I just have to know that, okay, this is how I'm feeling. And there's something there for me to chew on.
Exactly, because these are the moments that learn the most. I mean, and they're rough and they're emotional, and you just want to get, numb the pain. However, some people run, some people eat, some people drink, whatever. You just want to numb it. You want to forget about it. You want to zone out. But these are the times when we can learn so much from them, and then hopefully heal whatever hurt or pain is there. And then on the other side, it's usually something brilliant. It's usually, we go to another level when we get on the other side of that pain, but we have to work through it.
Yes, we have to have courage and strength to know that we're not going to die if we go into that pain. Yeah. And I'm getting to the point now, at times, not all the time, but at times, where when I'm very triggered and very upset, I actually embrace it and welcome it and say, ooh, this is a good one. Let's do this.
That's beautiful.
Instead of, oh my God, I can't do this, right? So like last week I was on this cleanse, and usually when you go on a cleanse, whatever emotions that you've been repressing or didn't want to feel, you get very raw. And it all comes up and you really feel it because you don't have your caffeine and your food and your cheesecake and your cookies.
Right. And sometimes they're like undigested emotions that are literally stuck in the fat cells as well. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Right. Yeah. So I did a cleanse, and I was going through a very emotional time last week. And I just laid in bed and embraced the ugliness, the disgusting, horrible, dark, sad, angry feelings that were all so raw. And it was great. It was great.
So how did it feel?
Oh, awful.
Right.
Awful. But I just kept telling myself, this is the work you need to do, Amy. Yeah. You need to get comfortable with these feelings and not push them away and let them ebb and flow. And that's one of the beautiful things I discovered is they do pass.
Yes.
They come on strong like a wave, and it takes you over, and you're in it, and you're thrashing and feeling just horrible. And then, I'm not even kidding, 20, 30 minutes later, you feel like, okay, I'm all right. I'm on the beach. I'm laying out, getting a suntan, Right. So it's interesting to see those waves come and go and just ride them like a surfer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a storm coming through. And it's an amazing way to look at it, to go, okay, here comes the storm. I see it approaching. I know I'm going to be right in the middle of it, and let's see what happens. But to look at it with that curiosity we talked about earlier, with that compassionate curiosity, so that you're not judging yourself, you're not putting yourself down, you're not like, oh, Amy, get up out of bed, come on, get on with it, which is, a tendency in our society, like, oh, buckle up and get on with it. But that you're just in it and you're feeling it, because if we do, pull the bootstraps up and get on with it, we're suppressing emotions that are still inside our body and are still undigested, and are going to come back and say hello another time. Right?
And this idea in yoga called avidya, which basically means you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
When you allow the wave to come and just be with it and feel it, you actually start to realize you don't know very much about yourself. You don't know very much about the other person. And there's a lot of unknowns. And that person is, having waves crash and recede also. And it's okay to just be there, letting things happen as they're going to happen. And I feel better after I just allow, after I have that curiosity.
Right, exactly. And everyone deals with it in their own way, whatever it is, whether you go to bed, whether you go spend time in nature, you journal, you go, whatever it is, you have to find your way of dealing with it. But we all go through it. And this is the thing in our society. I believe that we tend to suppress this. And of course, we know that, we're embracing vulnerability more nowadays, which I'm glad about. More people are speaking about it, thanks to people like Brene Brown and Oprah and all these wonderful people who are saying we want more vulnerability, because in the end of the day, that's what brings us closer together. If we are not discussing our pain with our friends or family, that if we're covering up and hiding our problems, it builds up walls. We literally have an armor around us. And we have a wall around our heart. But the minute that we share something, and I remember feeling this really years ago, where I was always like, Miss Independent, strong woman, I got this, do it by myself. And when I started sharing the tough times I was going through years ago, that I felt that more connection with my friends. And it was wonderful. And I just was like, wow, why didn't I do this before? That you just go, you know what? I don't have it all together. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'm kind of faking it. And here's the deal. And just let it out. Because perfectionism, or wanting to be perfect, really is just a fear, because none of us are perfect. We don't have it all together. We're all just trying to figure it out. So the more vulnerable we are and open up, it's such freedom in it. And the person you're sharing will appreciate it so much, and they'll probably in turn be vulnerable with you. But I think that true intimacy, and I think Brene Brown said this, comes from being vulnerable with another person, being compassionate.
Yeah, and that brings us back to Pema Chodron, who is very, very open. And she's been such an inspiration for me as a teacher to allow my flaws to be seen, to tell stories about myself that are not very flattering. I mean, Pema is all about that. She's totally willing to admit that she's a human who is imperfect, who has outbursts of anger, and who's impatient and judgmental. I mean, the stories she tells about herself are basically saying, look, I have some knowledge to share with you, but I am not perfect. And I'm willing to be intimate with you and vulnerable with you and show you how it is that we get that bodhicitta heart, right? That vulnerable, soft, tender heart. I love teachers like that.
Yeah.
I don't want a perfect teacher. I don't want to put someone up on a pedestal.
No, I don't either. When I see humility and vulnerability and rawness, that's where I go to.
Right. They're doing the work. They're doing the work.
Right. And the reason you connect with them is because they've been through it. And the reason, that people connect with others is because they share their stories. Look at Oprah. This is why she is so popular, because she's very vulnerable. She's open. She's like, yeah, been there. And she speaks from the heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can, it's a tangible feeling when you come in, especially into contact with women that are willing to be that strong yet vulnerable, because it does take a lot of courage to do. You come into their presence, and oftentimes they do have a lot of kapha, and you just feel it. You feel safe. You feel like, okay, this is going to be messy. She's messy. I'm messy, but we're both committed to a relationship together.
Yeah. It's beautiful when you can get that openness, because you feel it when somebody is not being open or they're not being authentic. I can feel that energy.
That's one topic I was thinking, should I go there today? But I'm going to.
Go for it.
I think when someone hasn't learned to give themselves compassion, there's no way that they can be compassionate towards others in an authentic way. And so if we haven't learned self-compassion, we pretend to have a compassionate heart towards others, but it comes across as very inauthentic, very phony, and people are actually repelled by it.
Yes. Even if they don't know what it is, they'll the energy. You're just like, I don't know what it is, but I just don't want to be around that energy.
Right. And it feels like you're walking on eggshells. It feels like, is this person being honest with themselves? Is this person being honest with me? So whenever I talk about compassion, I always say, start with yourself. Do the Kristen Neff self-compassion exercises and get the books and go to the workshops. And, Kristen Neff is this brilliant researcher from Austin, Texas, who teaches self-compassion. And there's 8-week programs out there. Yeah. That people all over the country are going to her 8-week workshops. And the 3 principles that she teaches is kindness to yourself. And I see that as self-care and taking care of yourself and not being so codependent that you're taking care of everybody else and not you.
Yes.
And the second principle is understanding that we have a common humanity, that all of us are imperfect. All of us have issues. Yeah. All of us come to this world out of balance, and that's just the facts. And then the third kind of leg on her table is to give space for the feelings of embarrassment and shame and humiliation and being imperfect and feeling like you're not adequate, and just to, like we were talking about earlier, to be able to ride those waves and be with those feelings.
Yeah, because we're not going to get everything perfect. And, this is the great start of the explanation of self-compassion. Like, what is it? It was my next question for you. And you obviously went right in there with this, with Krista. What's her last name? Neff?
Neff, Neff. You can go on YouTube and see all sorts of
That's great.
videos.
Thanks for that. I never heard of Krista, so I'm excited to check her out. But yeah, self-compassion, like you said, it's not judging, not beating yourself up, because we all have to make mistakes. We don't come into this world knowing things, how to do things. So we're going to screw up. And it's just like that with everything. We're going to screw up. We're going to fall. We're going to, have to go through the baby steps, which is good for us, because I think it's great for our ego to start at the basics and to go, okay, I don't know everything, and to have some humility and awareness that, we're not going to have everything perfect from the get-go.
Absolutely. Going back to Kristen Neff, when I first saw her books, my mom had given me some, and I was kind of like, self-compassion, whatever, just another spiritual, self-help thing. Yeah. And then I watched a movie that Kristen Neff and her husband produced about their son with autism, and it's called The Horse Boy. It's a beautiful documentary. And what they put on film as they tried to work with their young son who had autism and just had terrible, 6-hour rageful periods where they just could not help him, and just, going to the bathroom in his pants, and just the things that Kristen and her husband were willing to put on tape and show the world about their family and the difficulty of having an autistic child. When I saw that movie, it changed my life. I was like, wow, that's vulnerability. That's allowing the world to see your whole self and not just the parts that you want them to see. And the whole movie, she had to give herself compassion for being imperfect, for not knowing how to do things, for looking like a fool, for trying to figure it out as she went along. Right. There was one scene in the movie where I can't even describe it to you. I don't want to ruin it for you, but my mouth dropped open. I was like, okay, she's the real deal. Okay. And then I went back to her books that my mom had given me, and I had a whole new appreciation knowing that she was willing to have self-compassion because life is damn hard.
Yes. Oh, yes, it is. And I hope that with all these people like Krista, like Brene Brown, like Oprah, and all these amazing people out there talking about compassion, that the tide is going to turn, because compassion is kind of looked at as a weakness in our society. And it's looked at as, when we look at people who have the most compassion, like carers and nurses and people who work in those compassionate arts, that they're often the least paid in our society, right. And which we need to just turn that upside down, please.
Teachers.
And teachers, exactly. Thank you for mentioning that. It's terrible how little they're paid. And they're not looked down on at all. Like, people appreciate what they do, but they're not recognized in our society.
Well, I want to jump on that because I've been talking to my husband recently about how when people have material wealth and when they look to be successful and drive the right car and have beautiful homes and perfect children, and that somehow we look up to them and think they have it all together. But my guess is that if we went behind the closed doors of their homes, it would not be a pretty sight. Yeah. And that the people who are truly vulnerable and in touch with their deeper self and intimate in their relationships and willing to be imperfect, the janitors and the teachers and the people who don't have any image that they have to project to the world, that is true strength. That is true courage. That is the people we should be looking up to and saying, wow, that's who I want to be.
Yes, I think we, at least in our own world, please acknowledge the carers and the nurses and, the teachers. And I was just listening. I'm addicted to podcasts, obviously, because I keep talking about them. But Jimmy Kimmel was on, again, Oprah, I think, again, Super Soul Sunday. And he's gone through a lot with he's the late night talk show host. And he's been very vulnerable this past year and very compassionate. And he is just a genuine, I feel, compassionate guy, because his son was born with a heart defect and had to have open heart surgery. So he spent a lot of time in the hospitals. This person who's working probably for, a lot lower wage than he's earning saved his child's life, and the compassion he had for them. He's seeing more into that world now of people who don't have money and on the other side of the fence, and how we need to be aware. And he's now fighting for rights for these children who don't have health insurance, and for these families who are suffering, and so on. So, it's good to see celebrities using their celebrity like that and really doing good. And that was a great podcast episode.
I've often thought that it isn't until we suffer deeply ourselves that we can truly have compassion, that through watching his child go through open heart surgery and then thinking of all the children who don't get that opportunity, that is what really, helps us to have compassion for one another, is suffering. I mean, that's what the Yoga Sutra says. Yoga Sutra 216 says the best day of your life is when you're deeply, deeply suffering, because you'll turn a corner and you'll be different.
Yes.
But I have a hard question for you. I like to ask you questions.
Go for it.
When some people go through really hard, difficult times, they actually dig their heels in and become more rigid and more controlling and more obstinate. And other people, when they go through a really hard time, they do become the bodhicitta heart, the softer, more tender, vulnerable, intimate, authentic person. And what's that about? Why does one person go towards hardness and rigidity and righteousness, and the other one allow themselves to sink into those hard, difficult feelings. What do you think?
I would think it's to do with the mental gunas. I would think that a person who digs their heels in and just refuses to look at the other side, or to be compassionate, or to be objective, has a more of a rajasic mindset and cannot see beyond that veil. We talked about this. I talked about this in another episode. The mental qualities, the gunas, where rajasic is that need of power and to be right, and negative ego, and just really want to strive for to be the top dog, to be more power. So you don't have that objective quality, you don't have the compassionate quality, you don't have that ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, because you're so focused on your progression and on your power and your purpose. That's my feeling.
Love that.
Whereas then the person who is more compassionate has more of the sattva quality, which is the more of the balance. And then when you have the sattva quality, it just takes away that veil of rajas, and you can see the bigger picture of things, and you have more awareness, and you can step back, which I think is what compassion is, that you're stepping back and you're looking like, okay, let me look at all sides here and take an objective view as much as I can, and see the bigger picture.
I love that. I mean, for me, the steps are ultimate self-care to get myself out of rajas, out of that fire and wind, tornado and forest fire frame of mind, and get myself into balance. And then, like you said, do the very hard work of svadhyaya, or self-reflection, where I actually step into the other person's shoes and I try to understand what might be going on for them, and how they might see something, and go all the way around, all the angles of, wow, okay, they said this to me. What could be causing them to have that image of me? Or, and really going there, not to give up my needs, but to balance both of our needs, and then find that place where, we both did harm to one another, and we both probably have some apologies, and I understand where they're coming from. I understand where I'm coming from. That's really hard work, especially when you're in rajas. You can't do it from rajas.
No, you can't, because you can't even see it. You're like, I'm right. You're like, I'm right. And that's it. It's my way or the highway. Yeah. And, just going back to these carers and these people who we all acknowledge, carers and nurses and teachers and many other people who are just those wonderful, compassionate souls who do such amazing work in the world, and do it quietly, and and not making a big fuss about it, and not looking for lots of attention. That, I love the Einstein quote again, is that these kind of people, I should say, are geniuses in the art of living, more necessary to the security and joy of humanity than the discoverers of objective knowledge. Isn't that beautiful? That these are the people,
gorgeous,
right? That these are the people, like you said, that we need to be looking through. And this brings my mind to the indigenous people of the world. And, the indigenous people of the world I feel we have to have huge compassion for. These are the people who have that connection and that compassion for nature and for humanity, and that they have so much to teach us. And I think in our society, we've leaned on, technological advances a lot, but we haven't advanced in other areas. And now we're kind of at this crossroads where, capitalism is kind of not working out for us, and we're screwing up the environment. And, Mother Nature is fighting back, because she's like, hey, hello, I need some compassion here too. And these indigenous people have that knowledge. They have that connection that we don't have, and that compassion for the animal kingdom, for Mother Nature, for humanity. What do you think about that?
I could not agree more. And these are the wise people of the earth that we should be looking to and following, the Jane Goodalls, right? It's so interesting to watch our society kind of fall apart and people separating and calling each other snowflakes or rednecks or whatever whatever the words are that we all call each other. I just, it makes me sad. I mean, I was just reflecting as you were saying that the indigenous people have that wisdom and that knowledge that we need to go towards. But I also think there's people in different parts of the country that are more real in terms of family and values and faith, and they know what matters. And it's interesting to me because, like I have some prejudices against certain areas of the country that I think they're kind of backward and they're racist and they're this and they're that. But if I also look at the good qualities, they actually are sometimes living more like indigenous people in their daily lives.
Yes, it's very true. And, just as, the explorers who came upon all these indigenous tribes, be it the Aborigines, the Native Americans, whomever, thought they were ignorant, they have more, we could say, street smarts, right, in nature, in the world, than we ever do. Because, and it's funny that you're talking about, now in present day, not only indigenous, but in present day, you wonder if it's people's experiences, if they live in, say, in the country, or they're not in big cities, in big sprawling metropolis, and they have more of a connection to the community and to nature. Is that what leads?
I think so.
To it?
I think so.
Yeah.
And this just goes to show that we all have something to learn from one another.
Right.
Maybe we don't prefer the history of racism, but we could learn a whole lot about being in an authentic, grounded, community-based system where we depend on one another and we watch out for one another, and we're all in this together.
Yeah, it does all come down to community and connection. And just, the golden rule, Amy, is, we all know, is treating others as you want to be treated.
Right.
That's the golden rule, right? That's what it basically comes down to, is treat every human being, every living thing, animal, everything in nature as you would want to be treated.
Absolutely. And how do we allow for enough spaciousness in our minds and our hearts to let other imperfect human beings come into our lives, and to allow them, as you said, to be on their journey and do their thing, and it's not the way we would do it, and have enough compassion for ourselves and for them to allow what is. Allow, as Rumi, said once, out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field, and I'll meet you there.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that. That's beautiful. And that's what I think it is. It's zooming out. That's what I always come back to. When we get too fixated on something, like even in our own day-to-day, just going out in nature, or if you're in an argument, just taking a breather or taking some time away, it's zooming out and looking at the bigger perspective. Just like if you're having a problem with someone at the moment, or, on this one area, for example, a coworker. Well, you have to zoom out and put into context, like, well, maybe they could be having a really tough time at home, or maybe they had a really bad morning, and that's why they're in a pissy mood today. You just have to zoom out and just take a moment, take a breath, and reflect that there's more to it than this small little situation.
Right. And even zoom out within your own perspective, that maybe it's not even about not getting the promotion. Maybe it's about all the times in your life when you felt rejected. And to me, that's a way of zooming out also, is to say, okay, this is bigger than what I'm pinning my anger on right now.
Right.
I need to go back and do some work, some internal exploration, digestion of feelings and emotions and thoughts, and use this as an opportunity. I can't remember who said it, but, no crisis should be wasted. Every crisis is an opportunity to move through something that has been very painful and driving your behaviors unconsciously for many, many years.
So true. And yes, there is an opportunity. I think of when you say that, instantly Malala, that young girl who was shot in the head by the Taliban in Pakistan, comes to mind. I mean, she's just amazing. Talk about, she miraculously survived that point blank shot to the head. And she never, I've heard her be interviewed, and she said she never felt angry at the men who shot her, or she never asked, why me? She just saw it as an opportunity to speak up, to use this platform she now had to speak on education for young girls in these areas where they were being suppressed. And even her mother, wasn't angry at the shooters. Her mother actually had compassion for the shooters' mothers and thought, oh my goodness, how do their mothers feel that these young men shot at young girls? Isn't that amazing?
She is such an inspiration. I've watched her. I know. I've watched her on Jon Stewart, The Daily Show, and Jon said, "Well, what would you do if they, came into your bedroom and started to attack you?" And she said, "Well, I would tell them that I want education for their daughters also, and that they can go ahead and shoot me and kill me if they want, but I will still be hoping for education for their daughters."
Wow. You see?
Whoa.
That's a whole nother level. But I do think, again, it goes back to that golden rule: treat people as you want to be treated. And also that if we practice compassion on a daily basis, and just like we practice gratitude, right? We've all talked about gratitude, and we hear it constantly. Do have a gratitude practice, which I truly believe in. You look for the gratitude in every moment. If you start your day off with, taking time at the end of meditation or whenever, just to think about 5 things you're grateful for, have a tendency, and I know this has happened to me, to look for those things you're grateful for then throughout the day, because it's in your memory. It's in your thought process. Just like if you're having compassion on a daily basis, then it becomes a natural instinct, I believe, because we have the quality within us. We just have to practice it like we practice an instrument.
Yes, we're growing that quality. And I think if you're truly growing it and not just faking it, you'll feel it. You'll feel vulnerable. You'll feel tender. You'll feel deeply. You won't be doing a spiritual bypass of, oh, I have gratitude. Oh, I have compassion, right? If it's in your head, it's not working.
Yes.
If it's in your heart and you feel it somatically in your body, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, you feel it at your core.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd love to finish up today with giving a little bit of homework. Is there anything else you want to say on compassion before I discuss?
I think we're doing great.
Yes, my homework. Okay, so I did this. I did this as a little challenge. I think a Facebook challenge a year or so ago. But my challenge to you guys out there, and for ourselves too, is to show compassion daily by just acknowledging people. Now, what I mean by that is saying hello to people or just smiling at people. Now, you can't do this if you're in a big city. You can't go around and say hello to everyone. But if you're out in the morning and you're walking the dog, or you're just in an area where there's, a few people around, like I do it when I go out and exercise in the morning. There's only a few of us down by the beach. And I make sure and just look at people and just acknowledge them. Sometimes I'll say bonjour. Sometimes I'll just smile at them. I definitely get glances like, is this girl crazy? But then the next day I see them, they say hello back, and I feel great. So I think that's huge. I grew up in the country where we waved to everybody. And I think it's so beautiful to acknowledge people. And I love, it's such a great feeling when they give you a smile back or a hello back. And, not to be aggressive about it, but just to acknowledge people. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. I think both you and I grew up in small country towns, and that's how it was, that everyone knew everyone else. We all knew what other people's problems were, and we loved them anyway. And you can't get through the grocery store in less than an hour because every 10 feet there's another person to say hello to.
Yeah.
But isn't that what makes life worth living?
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah,
That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's so beautiful to acknowledge people, if someone passes me, and especially if we're the only two out there, the early hours of the morning, it's sunrise, and we're the only two humans here, acknowledge each other, say hi, don't avert your eyes. It's like people want connection. When I don't want a conversation, just say hello, just acknowledge, or, the international head nod. Or smile, and it just and it's beautiful, and people appreciate it, and it just it
goes back to shared humanity.
Yeah. I'd love to hear how it goes for you. And don't forget that we have the podcast Facebook group, Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. I'll put that link in the show notes. And let us know how your, the Say Hello project is going. I'd love to hear it. I think the ripple effect of these little actions, as simple as they are, is huge. And it can feel weird at first, but even like a little smirk. Start with a smirk. It's nice.
I love it. The Say Hello project.
Yeah, let's do it.
Building compassion, one person, one moment at a time.
Yeah, I get a kick out of it now. I love it. Yeah, it's really nice. So anything else, Amy, before we finish up?
No, just thank you for being open-hearted and listening and being willing to play it by ear and be vulnerable together. It's really just such a joy to talk to you. Thank you.
Likewise, sister. I really appreciate our conversations. I look forward to them because it's always like, where is this going to go? And then it just goes and it flows. It's beautiful. And thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate your support. Love doing these podcasts, and if you're enjoying them and you think others may get value out of them, please just click on the share button and share it on, or if you want to write a review, that's always fab, because then more people will be able to find it. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you, Amy, my dear. I really appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, take good care of yourself.
You too.
Ciao. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Amy on compassion, and please let us know how your Saying Hello project is going over on the Elements of Ayurveda Facebook group. It'd be wonderful to hear your experiences. I also want to remind you of the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of the Elements of Ayurveda podcast on August 10th, 2018. And for that anniversary, I'm holding a competition. And the competition has 4 great prizes, which you can find out about, and which I spoke about at the start of the show. But for more info, head on over to the Elements Healing and Wellbeing website. On the events tab, you'll see the competition details there with all the prize details. And you can enter there also. You can enter as many times as you like. And then the drawing will take place on August 10th. So also, one final thing is that for the anniversary episode of the podcast, I'm going to be talking to people who have benefited from the podcast or my services, like the cleanses, the consultations, or the Daily Habits course. And if you're one of those people who would like to share your experience as a listener or as a client, well, then I'd love to hear from you. And you can record your little MP3 file on my website. If you scroll down to the bottom of any page on my website, you'll see a little record button. It's a voice record button where you can just leave a short voicemail for me. And then I'm going to be using some of those recordings on that anniversary episode. So if you feel so called to share your experience, to share your feedback of how Ayurveda has helped you, or the podcast has helped you, or my services, well, then I would love to share that on that anniversary episode. Thank you for your support, and I hope to bring you many more great conversations in the future. Take good care of yourself and be well.